Hello, MWest. Tom here. I've actually been planning on answering your atheism survey here for several weeks now, maybe even over a month. But every time I sit down to try to answer your survey, I end up running to 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and editing it down just doesn't work. So I've just, it's been important to me to fit it all into 10 minutes. So without further ado, here are my attempt to give you quick answers to these. Attempt 21 or 22 or something horribly big like that. Question 1. Age at which you identified yourself as an atheist. 13 or 14. I went straight from theism to a strong atheism at about that age. And then moving on to question 2, did you go through a non-atheist agnostic phase prior to arriving at atheism? The answer is no, although I did go through a fairly agnostic phase leaning towards atheism after that. I didn't believe per se, but I wasn't sure about it. I wasn't, sure enough to... Anyway. I answer some more of that at the end of the video. I've got a little addendum here that's not directly related to the survey. Question 3, early indicators predicting atheism. I think the most important early indicator predicting atheism was a strong desire to know things, a strong desire to discover, to find out. I loved to read. I read all the time. I read everything I could get my hands on, no matter what it was. I even was known to read phone books because that was the only reading material available. Other kids were off outside doing something or playing video games, and I was in my room reading. Read. Yeah. Another early indicator might be the fact that my father was a scientist and that he advocated thinking and rational behavior and evidence and other scientific principles. So I had some grounding in that at an early age. Question 4. Factors preventing you from arriving at atheism sooner in life. I would say that the primary factor preventing me from arriving at atheism sooner than I actually did was just simply age. Before puberty, you're not capable of rational thought and logic, and you just don't have enough information, life experiences. You just can't read enough to really put it all together before that age. You could be an atheist younger, but you'd have to be raised that way as an atheist. And I wasn't. My mother raised me as a Christian. So, yeah. Question 5, single defining event in your life that strongly impacted your eventual atheism. For me, this is all about discovery of alternate religions. When I first found out that Christianity was not the only game in town, that was a real defining moment. And when I further researched these other religions and discovered that there are more non-Christians than there are Christians, and that these religions were basically incompatible and attempted to answer the same questions but didn't answer them the same way. And then I discovered that there was no real hard agreed upon evidence for any of them, and that there was no more reason to be a Christian than there was to be a Muslim, a Jew, a Hindu, take your pick. I was a Christian by accident of birth, and nothing more. That was the defining moment. that was the moment at which I became an atheist. And I have just enough time left to squeeze on the 4-minute story I have in the can for the end of this video. I'll give the short answers in the comments so that you don't have to try and copy them out of the video. Alright, I've got about 2 minutes left, so I'd like to use it to tell a little story about a time that's not exactly questioned in your survey here. I didn't go through much of an agnostic period before I first identified as an atheist, but I did after I did. Between the ages of about, 13 or 14, whenever I first identified as an atheist, and 16 or so, I went through a period that I can only describe as militant atheism or evangelical atheism. It was effectively religious in that I seriously considered it to be my duty for the world to convert everyone I could get my hands on, and that I needed to do that. And so everybody who I had a chance, I would attempt to convince them. And one particular incident, in round about the age of 16, involved a girl I was going to high school with. And after our discussion, she was left in tears and whatnot, and eventually basically ran away from me. Some small number of days later, 2 or 3 or so, she attempted suicide, and I never saw her again. She never came back to school, and she and her family moved away before she ever came back to school. So I never had another chance to ask her why. And this left me thinking that maybe I was responsible for it, and made me rethink my path. And what evidence I really had that there was no God. And I came to the conclusion that my position of militant atheism or evangelical atheism was in its own way as indefensible as the theist positions. So for quite a number of years after that, I was much more quiet about it. I would have described myself as an agnostic who leaned atheist, and I would never have brought it up unless pressed. Effectively going back in the closet. But, then mid to late 20s sometime, I started to really pretty much work out of that. And I'm back towards some level of more strong atheism. And I'm back to believing that theism needs to end for the safety of humanity. That theism needs to end in its current form, or it will kill us. At which point, I feel the need to speak out against it. And now I've burned through 4 minutes that I didn't have, so I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll edit a few minutes out of the original. Alright. There's my responses. Catch you around.